Us guys, Coach Az here. Today we're going to talk a little bit about feints, what makes them effective, why we use them, and I'm going to give you 5 examples of some effective fakes that you can put into practice in your fighting and in your sparring. So let's get started. Firstly, what makes a fake effective? So a fake is effective if it causes your opponent to have a certain reaction. This reaction is either going to be a flinch, so getting them to close their eyes or to freeze up in their footwork or to move their guard to a certain position, or it's to give you a read on them. So for example, if I fake a kick at you, it's to see how you're going to respond if I was going to throw the kick for real. So do you drop your guard down? Do you use your footwork? And then I can use that information for when I choose to do my next move. You see, the first move is just there for me to gain information. That's what we could use the fake for. The second move is then to attack based off of what we learned from throwing the fake in the first place, okay? The other thing a fake must do, or must not do, it must not compromise you. So there's no point doing a massive fake that's then gonna leave you in a position to get hit and get lit up. So they need to be things that don't require too much commitment from us so we can easily recover, because sometimes your opponent's reaction to you throwing a technique might be to try and hit you. So if you fake a shot and their instant response is to throw a 1-2, you don't want to be so deeply committed in that fake that you then can't defend yourself. So we're going to go through some examples of some fakes now, and then we'll cover those bases a little bit more. Let's get started. So guys, the first fake we're going to talk about is the fake jab. We know that the jab is one of our most useful weapons in sparring. It's one of the most powerful tools. Well, having a good fake jab adds to that arsenal. Now, when it comes to faking any technique, but in particular the jab, what you want to think about is, what does that technique start with? So what is the first thing that your opponent is going to read on to anticipate a jab? Now, you might think that it's the fist and the fist coming at their face. But in reality, if I'm throwing a jab at you, if you look at the first thing that's going to move, it's probably going to be my shoulder. It's probably going to be my upper body. It's probably going to be my feet. There's more to it than just my fist moving to your face if I'm throwing it with some good technique. So when you're faking the jab, don't just push your hand forward. That in itself isn't very threatening or very convincing. But when I start putting my shoulder into it and I start twitching my hips forward, that makes that fake jab really effective. We know the jab is a great measuring tool, so we can use a full jab to measure our distance and keep our opponent at long range. A fake jab can do the same, but again, without overcommitting. So I can fake and see the response I get and see how they react to that jab. I can fake it low and I can fake it high. And I've still got my legs free and my back arm loaded and ready to fire. Okay, staying with the upper body, the second fake is our rear shoulder. So think of this as faking a cross effectively. Now the rear fake, remember that it's coming from your power side. Generally speaking, our jab and our lead leg, these are not our power techniques, but our back arm and our back leg, these are power techniques. So when we fake with these, we're seeing how our opponent is going to respond to something that's a bit more powerful, a bit more effective. So when I'm throwing that fake cross, again, I'm not really throwing an arm fake. Sure, my hand's going to move a bit, but really I'm focusing on this shoulder and jolting that shoulder forward to the target and back and trying to gauge that response. The hand still moves a bit, the elbow still moves a bit, and I'm coming back. Yeah, notice how quickly I'm recovering from that. So I'm not throwing it and then dropping down and getting clipped. I'm throwing it and recovering. So now we've got 2. We've got that lead jab and we've got that rear shoulder. And you can practice those 2 in tandem with each other. All right, fake number 3 is going to be our lead leg, in particular our lead chamber. So we're going to be practicing either from a front chamber position, which basically means that my hips are facing towards my opponent and I'm lifting straight up. So as if I was going to throw the front kick, the teep into it, or I was going to shoot an axe kick, but I'm just lifting that knee straight up in. Now, the beauty of faking with our legs is that A, we can use it to cover some distance. So not only can I lift that knee up, but I can push off my back leg and I can use it to get inside. It draws the eyes down and the attention down to the leg, and it might even bring the guard down, exposing them to my hands. So from here, nice simple example of that, I slide in with that front kick chamber, boom, get their guard down, and strike to the head. And of course, my hands are ready to go all the way through into that target. Alternatively, the same way we did with that front arm and same thing we think about with that lead jab, I'm faking that lead leg to maintain distance, to get them to second guess about coming into range and attacking me. Lifting and just getting that response, combine that with that rear shoulder, with that lead jab and that lead leg. We're now starting to show them loads of different looks. All right, guys, the next fake is going to be the rear hip. Now, if you're into the UFC, if you're into kickboxing, Israel Adesanya is very famous for this rear hip fake. Really what we're faking, what we're trying to show and convince our opponent is of the rear leg roundhouse kick. And depending on your rule set, that might be going to the leg, that might be going to the body, and that could even be going to the head. And that will depend on what you've established in the fight. But generally speaking, when we fake this rear hip, we're trying to convince the person that that kick is coming. But now they don't know where it's coming, which allows us to set all kinds of things up off of that motion, okay? So for this rear one, imagine a straight line. So from your hip here to the opponent to the target. And you're gonna drive your hip through that line and back. Again, when we throw a roundhouse kick, we're not thinking about the foot first. We get the foot there, that's the end of the equation. The start of the equation is this rotation of our hip. This hip comes round, boom, and into the target. So from here, shoot that hip and flick it back. And the more you practice this, the quicker you can get that flicking motion. And again, see how my hands are free. So I can show that to land my hand. I can show that to set up my jab and even combine it with that lead leg. So now effectively, guys, we're able to feint with all four of our limbs. We can fake with that lead jab, that rear shoulder, that lead chamber, and that rear hip. 4 different really effective fakes that you can start mixing in with your striking to create opportunities, create openings, and gauge the reaction of your opponent. Now I've saved number 5 for last because A, in certain rule sets, this might not be allowed, so not all of you would have access to this, and B, it's a bit of a trick shot. So it's not necessarily a fake, but it kind of fits in with what we're talking about. And it's what's called a foot touch. So in freestyle kickboxing, you're allowed to sweep the foot. And by this, I mean that you're allowed to hit to the outside or the inside of the foot to take balance and ideally get them to touch another limb on the floor, and it counts and it scores as a sweep, okay? I know in certain styles you wouldn't be allowed to hit to the foot. You'd get a warning for having to have your kicks up. You can kick to the thigh, maybe you can kick to the calf, but kicking to the foot might not be allowed. But if you're in MMA or freestyle kickboxing, you can do the toe touch. Now I'm gonna be kicking the base of my bag here, so excuse me if I go light. What we're doing here is we're using our lead leg simply to touch the foot, okay? Now really, what this is doing more than anything is just a distraction. It's taking their eyes to the lowest possible point and it's drawing their attention down to their base. So ideal situation, you touch their foot with your foot and they look down, boom, and you can land a strike, okay? Even if that doesn't happen, what tends to happen when someone touches your foot like that is you go flat. So you sink your weight down and you hold your position, which allows you then, if you've touched that foot, to then step in to range because they're now worried about their center of balance and they're gonna sink in to hold their position. So from here, this lead foot touches, boom, and then I'm into strike. Yeah, one more time from here, touch, boom, and I come in to strike. So guys, those are 5 feints that you can put in and practice. Do it shadow sparring, do it on the bag, make sure you include it in your sparring practice. Fakes need practice the same way that techniques do. So don't just save it for game day, practice them, execute them in front of a mirror or on a camera so you can see how effective they can be. And I'll see you on the next one.